Welcome into this week's episode of Parenting Playbook with Maureen Kyle here on Fox 8 CLE Plus. I don't know about you, but I think about every day. I feel like I want to jump in and just take something over for my kids. I feel the urge to meddle in something. It's just a natural, I want to call it the mama bear, maybe papa bear phase. Your kid comes home with a problem, or maybe they're trying to figure something out, and you want to jump in and help them. It's only natural. But there's a lot of development that happens when they're figuring things out on their own, whether it's with friends, homework, all of the things. So there are instances where we might need to jump in. You know, if something's dangerous or if we need to direct them, it's always hard to figure out that very fine line. So that is the topic that we are tackling today: when to meddle, when to just let it be. And our guest today is Dr. Kelsey Brocker from Akron Children's. Kelsey, thank you so much for being with us.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me.
So I have to start out, even last night, we had this all set, a few days ago. We knew we were going to talk about this topic. And my 12-year-old comes home from school. She got into, a heated discussion with a friend, and there was an issue that popped up. And even though I know I need to let her figure things out, I had that moment where I'm like, well, should I call the mom? Do I jump in? Do I text the mom and say, hey, our girls are having an issue, or do I just sit back and let it be? So I think this is something that we all feel no matter what age and what phase. So if you can explain, is that a mama bear instinct, papa bear instinct? You want to jump in and fix things all the time?
Oh, 100%. When we become parents, our brain chemistry changes, especially for moms. Seeing our children in tough situations, feeling uncomfortable themselves, our natural instinct is to protect them, to help them get back to baseline. We want them to feel happy as much as we possibly can. And sometimes that means almost resolving these conflicts for them in a way. So it's so innate to us in some capacity as a parents to kind of be the person to help fix that in some regards.
Yeah. Do you think that this generation of parents does it more than other generations? Just because I think, when we think back to our parents, I don't know if they were doing this or not.
Yeah. So I actually was doing some research on this because off the top of my head, I had no idea.
Yeah.
And so I have a couple of different concepts that I pulled from research articles. The first one, we kind of broke down parenting styles based off generation. So we know the baby boomer parents actually their focus as a parent was on respect for authority. And then the Generation X parents, they really emphasize the stronger desire for independence. And now millennial parents are focusing pretty heavily on emotional independence and adaptability, especially because we're kind of being parents with technology and having to be really adaptable in a way. So what I was actually seeing was that modern parenting approaches actually emphasize independent thinking more than prior generation of parents. And so my kind of working scientific hypothesis with this is that, well, first, we know that our tendency to jump in and meddle is more about us and our own anxiety and discomfort, kind of what we just said. We want to save them because we don't like seeing them uncomfortable and frustrated. So we feel like I'm going to take that from you by solving it, whether that's opening the lid to a cup or figuring out this math problem for you or helping with resolving the conflict with a friend. And it's to help our own anxiety and discomfort versus providing them with tools to do it themselves. I really attribute a lot of this generation does it more than others. We have social media, so everybody's posting everything on social media all the time. So is it more of that we're just more aware that it's happening now because people talk about it more frequently? So those are kind of some of the things I think can account for feeling like it's happening more often than whether or not it truly is.
Yeah. And since we're kind of on the topic, I do want to bring up this point. I, over my career, have interviewed a lot of successful people, and one of my favorite questions to ask them is when did you feel that big breakthrough, or when did you feel that big growth? And everybody says it's after they struggled with something. Like they always say like, oh, well, because I was really struggling with this. And it's such a great reminder. So what happens when a kid, especially somebody going through development, has to go through that struggle?
Yeah, it establishes resiliency, adaptability, also self-esteem, being able to realize like I can't, this was hard. I felt so uncomfortable. I felt so frustrated. I had no idea what I was doing, and I managed to figure it out anyway. That is like just seeing a child light up with that moment is remarkable. And the next time that they encounter something difficult, they're going to remember that time that this happened before and that they were able to do it. And so that extends significantly into adulthood. If we have kids from 0 to 18 who are coddled and have everything done for them their whole lives, when inevitably they do encounter a difficult situation, they're not going to have the skills necessarily in their toolkit to know what to do or how to manage it. And then when it's over or if it never resolves, it's really going to take a toll on them.
Now that we've established the need for that struggle, let's go through the ages and phases, because babies, obviously we have to jump in and do a lot for them. Depending on the toddler age, we have to jump in and do a lot. So when they're really young, maybe take us through that toddler phase. When is it that we do? I know that this is going to be a very broad brushstroke, but when is it that we jump in and help, and when is it that we let them figure out? Like, what are some examples?
Yeah, that's a great question, actually. So, first and foremost, this starts much earlier than what we realize. Kids are able to do so much at such an early age. This starts with like crawling and walking, right? Like they have this innate drive to do it, and we can't make them do that. They kind of have to figure it out themselves. And obviously, we have supports in place for those who are a little bit delayed with it. But at some point, kiddos do figure things out themselves. So when I think of toddlers, I think of kind of like developmentally appropriate tasks, like getting their sippy cup and filling it up with water, or getting themselves a snack, or even cleaning up spills or carrying their plates. So first, it's important to realize that accidents happen and it's going to be imperfect. And we want to very much prioritize the effort and the steps they're taking to get there, and remind them that the outcome is awesome, but also the fact that you're working hard. If something's not working, we're trying to figure out a different way to do it, and kind of being their cheerleader from the sidelines. The best thing we can do to start with is modeling, like showing them how I open the top on a cup and then having them repeat it after us, or guiding them verbally with steps to take to complete a task. And then if we start to see just complete meltdowns, I don't think that it's appropriate to jump in, but maybe being there and telling them, okay, we're getting frustrated. Let's take a break. Let's take some breaths. Let's walk away from it. It's getting to be too big for us. And then once we're feeling more calm, let's reapproach it and let's talk through some different strategies that we can do to try it this time in much more developmentally appropriate language, obviously. Right. But, just like being able to label their frustration and let them know that you see it and it is hard and it's okay. We're going to get through this together. You're going to do it, but let's problem solve this together, so that they know that you're there and that you're in their corner, but also that they can do it and physically do it themselves.
This might be more of a mom to mom part of the discussion. Since you mentioned that before we started recording, you mentioned that you have toddlers. I'm even just thinking about, I make them fold their own laundry, but it's not the way I fold laundry. And they put it away in that drawer, and it's not the way I put it away in the drawer, but they're doing it themselves. Like, how much grace do we have to give them too? Knowing that it's not going to be perfect.
Yeah, great question. My kids love to help with laundry also. And I don't think that there's anything more triggering for me personally than watching my child like drag it over the dirty floor and like just bundle it up. It's tough, and it really is a managing our own anxiety with those situations and kind of relinquishing a little bit of control, because they deserve to feel that pride and joy that comes with accomplishing an adult task in some sense. And so it can be helpful to kind of like show them, this is how we fold clothes, and then give them the opportunity to try themselves. And the older they get, the more appropriate it is to kind of correct it a little bit and show them, oh, if we do it this way, it could wrinkle, and let them know that there are consequences if we are a little bit thoughtless with it and just kind of get through it versus actually taking the time to do it the right way.
Yeah. And then when we start to get into those older years, I mean, even preteen and teen, how much of the, I don't want to say like leash, but like, when you give them a little bit more space and like you let them, I always like, whenever I've interviewed a psychologist and they say like, you let them swim a little farther from the side of the pool.
Yes.
I guess that's the best way to put it. So, do we push them too, or do we just let them, like, how do we push them to maybe try some more things and not meddle that much?
Yeah. Oh, that is kind of like a case by case, situation by situation sort of scenario to me or concept. Because when it comes to laundry, we want to, that's something simple that's easier to correct and provide some very direct feedback on it versus if it's something more serious in terms of like friends or whatever that is. Sometimes they have to learn these things themselves as much as we want to, like give them the warning signs or jump in. It kind of takes a second you have to take a second to kind of step back and assess, what are the true consequences of this? Is it something minor like wrinkled clothes? Okay, well then he's going to go to school with wrinkled clothes and he'll probably learn next time not to do it that way because I look kind of like I just pulled out of bed versus is this something that's a direct threat for their safety or health? If that's the case, then in my personal professional opinion, absolutely. That's where I draw the line. I'm not going to allow anything to threaten your overall well-being in that way.
Yeah. And we're so focused on mental health, especially for tweens and teens, because life has changed. There's a lot of social media. There's a lot of things that get introduced that is affecting their mental health. So when it comes to those relationships, and even the example I used at the start of this show where, our child is having an issue with a friend, where do we jump in? Where do we guide? Where do we step, I guess?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's important to remember that children are always watching, right? Yeah. So they're little sponges. So from the second they're born, I mean, as babies, they don't have a lot of situational awareness, but the older they get, the more they're paying attention to listening to how we're talking to people on the phone, or paying attention to how we are interacting with our friends when they come over, or their friends' parents, or our spouse, or our partner, talking with us. So all of these things are coming together to facilitate communication strategies, conflict resolution skills, and just interpersonal relationship dynamics. So being mindful, and it's hard because we don't want to act as though we're like trying to act all the time for our kids and role play for our kids, but they're always watching. And so we want to try from an early age to set a good example and allow them to see that mommy and daddy or your parents don't always get along. There's going to be differences. And this is how we come together and discuss it and overcome it and allow them to see that resolution. That's the biggest part, because it's easy for a kid to see mom and dad come home from a long day at work and then they fight over the dishwasher and how it's loaded, unloaded, whatever it is. And then sometimes they miss that piece, because then it's like, let's wait till the kids go to bed and we'll discuss this. And then they never get the opportunity to see, how did you come together and work through this? And that's a really big piece of this puzzle, is that children, obviously we don't want to air our dirty laundry all the time, but we also do want to provide them with a sense of, there's going to be arguments. You're not going to get along with everybody all the time. That's part of life. And even if it's not a romantic relationship or a friendship, even a professional relationship, how do you come together, work through things, and move forward from it?
Yeah, I like that. Now, mentioning conflict resolution, I think that's a topic that comes up a lot in my friends' circles. Teaching kids conflict resolution. And when they're in that moment, I don't know if they remember how mom and dad worked it out over the dishwasher. They're mad. They are like, so-and-so took my turn. So-and-so was mean, and so how do is there any sort of language you would recommend or any sort of conversation flow you would recommend for us as parents when our kid walks through that door and is mad because their friend did this or that or left them out or whatever it is?
Mhm. The craziest part about this is a lot of times kids just want to be heard and validated.
I guess we needed to remember that too. That's interesting. You know what? Yes. Yeah, I was just having a conversation with somebody else about, a lot of people are fixers. They want to jump in and fix.
Yep.
So what is that conversation like though? I mean, so then do we just go, sounds great, honey. Like, good luck tomorrow at school.
Yeah. Yes. So, I think of it as, again, my kids are younger, so we're not quite in they have their own conflict between themselves. But when they do come to me, like Adeline pushed me or she won't share with me, whatever it is, I say, and we just had this argument in the car on the way to school this morning. She won't share the toy with me or whatever. And I said, I understand that hurts your feelings, and he can make the decision to share with you or not share with you. And you also get to make the decisions in the future, based off, we want to allow our kids to learn about each other in their own way without interfering as well as possible, but also kind of labeling what we're seeing, like, oh, I can see that made you really frustrated. I would feel frustrated too if somebody pushed me down the slide, or I wouldn't want to play with them either. So take some time and, go to your room and do what you need to do, or come on, let's go play together, whatever that looks like. The great news is kids kind of forgive and forget very quickly, which is wonderful. So they're right back to playing with Johnny down the street an hour later. But they really being able to kind of label and say, I see that really hurt your feelings, or you need a little bit of space right now. What do you want to do in the meantime? And then you can go back and play when you feel ready, sort of things. And just letting them know that you see them, you hear them, you understand, do what you got to do.
I love it. I'm sure it's the parent who holds the grudge a little bit longer than,
the
kid.
Yeah, don't push my kid.
Right. Well, we're going to take a quick break, but I do want to talk about our own parenting behavior when we come back, because, sometimes we need to turn the mirror on ourselves and say, is it me? Am I the problem? Am I the one who's meddling too much? So we'll be right back with that. Welcome back to Parenting Playbook. The question today: when do I meddle? When do I sit back and let my kid figure it out for themselves? And obviously, there's a lot of different situations and a lot of different phases your kids go through. But I want to talk about how we can identify some of the things that we're doing. We have to admit when we want to jump in and take control of the situation. My guest today is Dr. Kelsey Brocker from Akron Children's. And Kelsey, we were talking just before, like, sometimes we hold the grudge against the kid who said the insulting thing to our kid or took the turn on that, and we remember that for much longer than they do. When is it? I want to talk about when we can identify when we should jump in and when we shouldn't, because I know your kids are a little bit younger, but once they really get into sports, what I see a lot is that the parent wants to jump in and talk to that coach all the time and advocate for their kid. And they want to talk to the teacher and fight for that higher grade for their kid. But, when is it that we cross that line?
Yeah, that's a great question for a lot of different reasons. Because we view our children through a certain lens, and sometimes it's kind of like rose-colored glasses, right? Like, we think that my kids are imperfect, but at the end of the day, I love them. I think they're great at everything they do. And then people who are not their parents, for example, teachers or coaches, see them compared to other kids in terms of behaviors, academics, capabilities in the sport sort of thing. So even though they're the best to us, comparatively, they might be in a different range. So in terms of teachers and reaching out to teachers, grades are pretty objective most of the time, and a pretty direct reflection of the work that our kids are putting in, the studying habits and things like that. So I do really caution parents to avoid reaching out to teachers to advocate for a better grade, or, oh my gosh, Johnny, I know he forgot his homework, but here it is. Can he still get credit? Because providing an opportunity for our children to make mistakes is how they learn and how they problem solve and identify solutions. My oldest has homework at his preschool right now, and he did it and completed it, but forgot to turn it in. And I mean, they get like dollars for a treasure chest or something.
Yeah.
And he was pretty devastated about the fact that he forgot it. And I thought about it and I was like, this is best case scenario. I want him to be making these mistakes as early as possible so that we're able to learn from it. And we had a conversation of, okay, so what is our solution? How are we going to remember our homework better next time? And he came up with this idea of, I'm going to make a note for myself and maybe put a sign on my cubby to remember it. And he can't read, but he can also just see and know that what that note is supposed to mean. And I was wildly impressed. Like, he came up with that by himself. And so he has not forgotten his homework again, which has been fantastic. And he's diligent about checking it and doing it. So we have to let them fail, especially the earlier the better in these ways, so that they learn how to communicate with the teacher and explore additional options for studying or extra supports to help them combat a difficult grade. And then with sports, honestly, I mean, I genuinely feel, unless we have a very sincere reason to believe that our child is being targeted or treated inappropriately, the less we try to involve ourselves in the sports and the coaching and stuff like that, the better, because the sport is for the child. And if they feel like they deserve more playing time or they're not getting good one-on-one attention enough, we want to set them up for success to have those conversations themselves and advocate for themselves.
So then what are the questions you think we can ask in those situations? The kid comes home and is like, anything from, Mom, I failed this test, to, Mom, I'm getting benched. Like, we always want to jump in and go, okay, well, all right, we're getting a private tutor or we're getting private lessons in soccer or whatever it is. But do we have the conversation with them about what can you do about it? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah. So if a child comes home and says, I failed this test, my first instinct, and again, it's easy for me to say because I'm not there yet, but I would say, okay, talk to me about how we prepared for this test. What are the steps we did to set ourselves up for success to do well in this test? And if we truly did everything that we could have done, we were diligent with our note taking, we had great study habits, we devoted enough time, we asked appropriate questions, then to me that says, okay, we might need a little bit of extra support. So what do you think? Do you feel like tutoring is something you'd be interested in? Do you want to reach out to your teacher? And again, set them up for the ability to do that themselves and follow through themselves. So we can provide options if they're needing those extra supports in place. And we also want to give them the opportunity to follow through independently.
Yeah. Is there any sort of encouragement we can give the kids who, I even just went through this with my 10-year-old. So I'll use her as an example because, she had a question about the sport she plays. I said, well, you have to go ask the coach. She knows the coach well, but she started crying and she's like, I'm afraid. I'm too afraid. I don't want to do it. And so she won't do it. So how do we encourage them to advocate for themselves?
Yeah. And that's so common right now with this generation of kids I think that we're so familiar of communicating with people through a screen or technology that face-to-face confrontation is terrifying. Like we're worried about what if I say something wrong, or what if I start getting emotional during this discussion, where we can proofread what we're sending in a text and we can manage our emotions without somebody having to see them if we communicate via email. But being able to do some role playing with them and say like, okay, well, you know what? This is definitely something that I want to encourage you to do by yourself. This is your sport. This is your coach. We love this coach. So talk to me. Just you and me, tell me what it is you want to convey to them. And then let's kind of problem solve and talk through this together about ways to talk to your coach about it.
Mm-hmm. And so then, let's talk really quick before we wrap up, because I think we're almost out of time here. What does that equip them with then going into adulthood and the late teen years when they do have those communication skills?
Yeah, just having sound relationships with, whether it's a romantic partner, friends, professors, coworkers, bosses, whoever it is. We want to give them the confidence to talk with people in all these different capacities without feeling scared or nervous about the outcomes necessarily.
Yeah. Well, Dr. Kelsey Brocker with Akron Children's. Thank you so much. I love this conversation. And you know what? When your kids are getting older and into these phases, let's talk again because
I'll have different responses then for sure.
You know what? Bookmark this podcast because then you're gonna want to jump in and talk to that coach, and you're gonna be like, wait, I have to take my own advice. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it. It's a topic that comes up no matter what age and what phase your kid is in. So I appreciate your insight.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me.
And thanks to all of you for watching Parenting Playbook. We have more episodes coming up, and you can always find our old ones streaming right here on Fox 8 CLE+. We'll see you next time.